side to up and down. I've listed on my thing here, you can't see them, but there's probably 30 things that need to change to go from this guy to this guy. And as we saw, in 1 million years worth of time, 50,000 generations in Lenski's experiment, we saw minor change. But you're expecting to go from this to a fully aquatic whale in 2, 3, 4 million years? That, to me, is a huge extrapolation that just does not fit with the evidence, okay? Tetrapod evolution. We have a number of transitions. Euthen, Opteron, Pandrit, I'm not even going to try and say that one. These are around 380 million years ago. And then we have Ichthyostega and Acanthostega. They're around 365. And what they did, and if you search any evolution textbook that's been written in the last 5 or 6 years, they will all have Tiktaalik right in between. They said this is the perfect transition for evolution. You creationists want evidence? Here's the evidence. Here you have Tiktaalik, who is becoming a tetrapod. A tetrapod is a 4-footed creature. Basically, this is the evolution that takes a fish out of the water and puts him on land, able to walk around. And so here's the fish, here's the tetrapods, here's the intermediate. Here's the problem. They recently discovered in 2010 in Poland, yeah, I think it was Poland, fossil evidence of a tetrapod. And they have the walking, even the toes. They can count the number of toes. They found this at 397 million years ago. But here's the problem again. You have the evidence for a full tetrapod before all the transitions. This is all backwards. They would have never expected this. So Tiktaalik cannot be a transitional form because we already have the footprints. It's just a matter of time before they find the organism that made the footprints. Okay? So again, this is 2010. My textbook, that I'm using in biology class at my high school, still has Tiktaalik as one of the prime showcase evidences. Hey, look, the time scale matches perfectly. 10 million years between these two. Just perfect. But they don't mention the fact that we've actually found footprints even older. Okay? So this can't be a transition. Let's talk about the argument for design. So we've looked at our arguments against evolution, but is there any arguments that we could make for design? Well, is there design in nature? According to some biologists, yeah. Many biologists admit that living things appear to have been carefully and artfully designed. Richard Dawkins, page 1 of his Blind Watchmaker, says, biology is the study of complex things that appear to have been designed for a purpose. Okay? This is right from the beginning. So now going back to our discussion about theistic evolution, this came to me the other night, and I just wanted to throw it in. The atheist says that things appear designed but aren't designed. That's Dawkins' view. Now, this is a picture of Francis Collins, and he's a theistic evolutionist. He actually argues in his book that things appear undesigned. In fact, I've read his book, The Language of God, and he makes the argument for junk DNA, and he says, no God who creates life would put junk in an organism. Junk DNA is evidence for evolution, not for intelligent design. Now, Francis Collins needs to recant what he said because the ENCODE project, which was this huge project by numerous universities, numerous biologists, has come out and said, you know all that junk DNA, the 95%, 98% junk in our genome? Turns out it doesn't code for proteins, and that's why I thought it was junk, but it actually has all these regulatory functions. It's turning things on and off. And so they say 80+% could have function, which is wild. We'll just have to wait and see what other evidence comes out. But I say they're both right. Things appear designed because they really are designed. The Apostle Paul said, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, the eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen appear to be designed, clearly seen. This is not, you don't have to, it's not a guessing game, being understood by what was made. So he actually did make it. So it's really designed, okay? So I would argue that Paul would say things appear designed because they really are designed, okay? So how do you make a design argument? If you drive across the Black Hills of North Dakota, you'll find this rock formation, okay? Now that didn't come from wind and erosion over millions of years. That was an intelligently designed process. And the way you know that is because those faces fit a certain pattern for presidents, okay? Now you could go to the Grand Canyon and see, yeah, this doesn't appear designed, okay? Looks like probably wind and erosion and everything else. A lot of water over a little bit of time, or a little bit of water over a long period of time, depending on your view. Carved this canyon. Now, not all rock formations are that easy to decipher, which is which. For instance, the Old Man in the Mountain. Okay, this is located in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. It resembles, look at the side profile here. It resembles an old man's face in the mountain. But nobody carved this, okay? Nobody was up there chiseling away. That's from, literally, it's from wind and erosion. And they're actually trying to preserve it now, so they're up there trying to, put scaffolding and stuff so it doesn't eventually wear right away. And then what if you were an archaeologist, you stumbled upon a pile of rocks, and they just looked like rocks. But then if you were really trained, you would say, hey, that's not a rock. That's actually an arrowhead or something like that. So there's these categories. I would put them like this. Appear designed, really are designed. Appear designed, but really is not designed. You also have appear undesigned. I mean, this appears designed right here, but if you had it in a big mound, it would appear undesigned to the average Joe, but it really was designed. And then this final category where you have appears undesigned and it isn't designed. Okay? So we have these kind of categories of figuring this out. Now, in the biological realm, we're told that there is the appearance of design. How do you figure out if the appearance is real or not? Or it's real design or not? Well, a common result, distinguishing between which one is the answer, well, Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the DNA molecule, he says that biologists must constantly keep in mind that what they see is not designed, but evolved. So no, it just don't even consider that it was designed because it had to evolve. And that comes from a scientific naturalism philosophy, okay? It comes from naturalism, that nature is all there is, and that's all science is able to get at, is using this naturalistic philosophy. Carl Sagan said the cosmos is all there is, all there was, and all there ever will be. Now, I had to throw this in. I do another talk on science and faith, but I had to throw this in because I'm sure some of you are maybe confused over what science is and what it isn't. When someone says intelligent design or creationism isn't science, they're not talking about the methodology. You see, science has a methodology, the scientific method. And intelligent design researchers are using the scientific method, whether you like it or not. I was at Michael Behe's talk, and this guy came up, and he was just, after the talk, he was so angry with Michael Behe that he could possibly be making a design argument. He said, how could you confuse all these people? Intelligent design is not science. But he wasn't talking about the methodology. He was talking about the philosophy. He was saying, no supernatural allowed. Only natural conclusions. And I give this illustration to people. I say, imagine that a well-known person is murdered in their house. The mayor's there, the chief of police. You're a forensic science detective. And the chief of police turns to you and says, this case is your top priority. I want you to use your best forensic methodology to find the killer. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then you start walking. And then he says, oh, one more thing. You can't implicate a white man. Now, what question should kind of rise up in your mind? What if a white man did it? You see, naturalism is actually excluding conclusions a priori, before the evidence, okay? That's what's going on in our culture. Everyone thinks that scientists are just objective searchers of truth. I wish that were true, but it's not. And so we're fighting a battle against naturalism as Christians as well. So back to the story here. So so how do you test whether design is scientific? Well, there's a couple ways. We're going to look at irreducible complexity and specified complexity. Irreducible complexity. It was Charles Darwin who said that, he wrote in Origin of Species, if it could be demonstrated that a complex organ existed which could not have possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. This is Darwin. Darwin was actually open to criticism a lot more than any evolutionist is today. Well, Michael Behe has actually taken him up on that. And in his book, Darwin's Black Box, he comes up with organisms that couldn't possibly have originated through numerous successive slight modifications. He comes up with this idea of irreducible complexity. I'll just summarize it because I want to make sure I get through all this and I want to be sensitive to your time here. He basically says that organisms, different features of organisms, not everything, is intelligently designed, and some of those things are irreducibly complex. He compares them to a mousetrap, and he says, if all the parts aren't there, if all these parts aren't there, this thing won't catch a mouse if you're missing something. So all the parts have to be there at the beginning. If you have 2 parts, it's not going to catch the mouse. 3, no. And the way evolution works is it uses, the thing has to be, if it doesn't, can't use it, it's going to lose it, okay? And so you're not going to keep these things if it's not advantageous to the organism. One of those things he looks at is the bacterial flagellum. It's like an outboard motor on a bacteria. Those E. coli have a flagellum. It's a tail. Some have multiple flagellums. And these things turn. Now, this organism, this little micro machine, it turns at about 100,000 RPM. Okay? Can stop on a dime and turn the other way. That's about 1,600 revolutions per second. It's made up of 40 proteins. When they saw this is with an electron microscope. When they first saw this thing, they were like blown away. Because this is a little machine inside this organism. And it needs all 40 parts to work in concert to spin and move the organism. Okay? Oh, by the way, Richard Lenski, remember his experiment? Some of those organisms lost their tail. And that's because he was putting them in the food. They didn't have to move around for it. They could just sit there and eat without moving around. And so that was another thing. They evolved the ability to lose their tail. Again, they lost something. So that was another thing, not very convincing. It has all of these things, a stator, a rotor. It has bushings, a hook, all of these things. 40 protein parts. And there's no way to explain this. And what they've done is, they've taken this thing and they've taken one of the protein parts away. It's called reverse engineering. You take one away, does it function? No. Okay, let's take this one away. And it doesn't work? Okay, let's try again. It's a knockout experiment, reverse engineering. Okay? This is the way you could test design. And they pointed, we can talk about this, bacterial flagellum more in the Q&A if you guys have questions about it. Specified complexity. Turns out in our DNA we have what's called specified complexity. You guys use a design inference all the time. And let me show you an example. This license plate has specified complexity, okay? Or sorry, has complexity. This license plate here has specified complexity. Imagine on my birthday, I'm given a car, okay? My wife buys me a car. Maybe it's an old Galaxy, 60 whatever. And Ford Galaxy. And it says, the license plate says TIM, my name's Tim, and the year I was born, 1983, okay? Now, I could say, well, you know, someone had to get that license plate, and it's just lucky I did. Because it turns out the actual complexity